Before I was successful losing weight and keeping it off, and ultimately became a weight loss coach myself, I was stuck just like everyone else. I watched video after video on YouTube, I went down just about every rabbit hole, I tried every diet and supplement that I could find, and I would lose weight, but then I would get stuck and I would gain it all back again. And it would sting just a little bit more each time. Now I did eventually figure it all out, but it was a long and frustrating road for sure. And now, with over 10 years behind me working as a weight loss coach, we now have a 90% success rate with our clients, and I've learned a lot about what it takes to fully lose all the weight and to keep it off, and all the things that were holding me back. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing many of the weight loss mistakes that I made that kept me from feeling confident in my own body, so that you can save yourself the pain of repeating all the same mistakes and hopefully reach your goal much faster than I did. Number one is falling into the muscle weighs more than fat trap. Now, I fell into this many times before I figured out what was actually going on. And it is true, muscle does weigh more than fat. But when people say, I'm probably just building muscle, they're really just looking for a way to explain the reason that they're doing what they feel like are all the right things, but all of a sudden the scale stopped moving. And so their brain says, oh, well, you know what? Muscle weighs more than fat. I'm probably just building muscle. But the problem with that is that if you're truly in a calorie deficit, which you would have to be to lose body fat, you're not ever going to build any appreciable amount of muscle mass. Now, it is true that in maintenance, meaning if you're eating maintenance calories relative to the amount of activity that you're doing on a daily basis, that you might be doing what's called body recomposition, meaning you might be losing a little bit of body fat while building a very little bit of muscle. And it is true that over the course of a long period of time, excruciatingly long, you could see and feel changes in your body at maintenance. But the truth is that's only going to be maybe a 5, 10, maybe 15% improvement. In most people who are trying to lose weight, it's going to take way more than 5, 10, or 15% improvement for them to get to the image that they see in their head. So I don't want you to fall into the muscle weighs more than fat trap. I want you to understand that if your average weight is not going down week over week, and don't get me wrong, you can fall into a plateau that could last up to say about 2 to maybe even 3 weeks if you're a female. But if you're not seeing a new low on the scale after 3 weeks of consistently feeling like you're doing the right things, then I'm sorry to say you are not in a calorie deficit, and you don't want to get held up by this muscle weighs more than fat trap. You want to figure out why you're not in a calorie deficit, whether your food has drifted or your activity levels have drifted down, whatever that might be. But don't stay for weeks or months thinking that you're building muscle and losing fat at the same time when you're really just not in a calorie deficit. Number two is trying to spot reduce or target specific areas on the body for fat loss. Now, I used to think that this was possible before I figured out that it's actually not. And I have so many people that come to me asking, Matt, how can I reduce fat in my midsection specifically? And they think that there are specific exercises that they could do or things that they could do to just really target this area of their body or that area of their body. And I'm here to tell you that it just doesn't work that way. The body does not have the ability to specifically target fat loss in any particular area based on doing any particular exercise. What you have to do is just get yourself into a calorie deficit and stay in that calorie deficit long enough to see body fat reduce in the area that you want. Now, everybody's a little bit different genetically. Some people will lose weight in their hips first or in their chest area first. And some people like me will lose weight. Most people will lose weight in their midsection and their love handles last. So it just depends, but there's no way to accelerate fat loss in any one particular area. You just have to get yourself into a calorie deficit and then stay in that calorie deficit long enough until you see the results that you want to see in the area of the body that you want to see them. Now, that being said, you can, through strength training, build muscle in certain parts of your body, which will sort of enhance the look and the tone of certain areas faster. But that's not because we reduced body fat in that area. It's because we did build some muscle in that area and we maybe didn't have to lose as much body fat in the area now to see the result of tone and things like that that we wanted to see. But if you're walking around saying, okay, I'm gonna do 1,000 crunches a day to reduce fat in your midsection, you're completely missing the boat and you're wasting all sorts of time, focus, and energy focusing on something that's not going to get you where you wanna be versus versus focusing on the right things, which is going to be eating the right amount, moving the right amount, getting into a calorie deficit, and getting yourself through a consistent weekly rate of weight loss to where you want to be. And that just takes doing those things, and it takes time. Number 3 is believing in starvation mode and ultimately underestimating my calorie intake. There was a time when I didn't have the nutritional knowledge and expertise that I have now. And so what would happen is I would fall into that myth that if you don't eat enough food, that your body goes into starvation mode and then it stores away everything that you eat. And not only are you not losing weight, but you might even gain weight because you're not eating enough food. And now that I have literally years of coaching and expertise under my belt, I'm happy to tell you that that is an absolute myth. That is not true at all. It's not scientifically supported. In fact, it's been debunked and proven wrong time and time again. I can tell you I have not yet found a single client who did not lose body fat when we put them into a true and real calorie deficit. But what I did find with myself and with others is that it's really easy to think you're in a calorie deficit, but you're not really in a calorie deficit because you're underestimating your caloric intake or overestimating how active you're being. So I really just had to get so much more educated around truly understanding nutrition and actually being able to read food labels and being able to modify recipes and being able to accurately make sure that what I think I'm taking in for a caloric intake every day is actually what I'm taking in, and not doing what most people do, which is underestimating my caloric intake by 30 to 50%, which is the average person underestimates their caloric intake by anywhere from 30 to 50%, and they overestimate how active they are being. The other thing that I think a lot of people fall into when it comes to underestimating their caloric intake is they fall into false marketing claims. Like they might go through the grocery store and they might see all of these products that say high protein, low calorie, this and that and the other, but they don't know how to read food labels. They don't actually have a depth of knowledge around nutrition. So they're falling prey to all of this marketing, but they don't actually have the knowledge and the skill to actually make sure they're eating the right amount every day, or they're getting completely distracted by all this marketing in the industry around fat loss supplements and pills and biohacking and all this crap that distracts you from the real issue, which is you're just not in a calorie deficit. Okay, so starvation mode, not a thing. If you are not losing weight like I wasn't, just realize that you've just got to dial in your food more, dial in your activity levels, and then you'll be in a real calorie deficit and you will lose weight. But starvation mode, not a thing. Number 4 is misunderstanding hunger. Now, hunger is really interesting because a lot of people, when they first start losing weight, I think they're kind of taken surprise by hunger because number 1, hunger is uncomfortable. But a lot of people think, oh my gosh, if I'm hungry, A, it's uncomfortable, I don't want to be hungry. But B, this must be a bad thing. And I say misunderstanding hunger because in the beginning, when you very first get yourself into a calorie deficit, hunger is actually a good thing. It's a good sign that you're actually in a calorie deficit, that you have successfully gotten yourself into a calorie deficit. And in the long term, obviously we want to do things that we can do with our dietary intake by increasing protein, eating more non-starchy vegetables, getting more fiber into our diet, things like that, to make it feel like we're not actually experiencing hunger anymore because we're eating a higher volume of food that's lower in fat and lower in calories, but higher in protein and fiber and flavor. And then we won't really feel hungry anymore. But in the beginning, when you first get into a calorie deficit, hunger is a great thing, right? When I first start dieting to lose a few pounds because I want to lean down for the beach or something, the first thing I say is, okay, hey, I'm feeling the hunger. Great. I know I'm in a calorie deficit. Let me maximize my intake of protein and fiber, non-starchy vegetables, make sure the foods that I'm eating are enjoyable and satisfying, but within the calorie goal that I'm shooting for. And that way, if I do that right, the hunger always goes away. Number 5 is trying to out-exercise a bad diet. Now, it is true that when we are more active, we burn more calories. And when we burn more calories, we can, in theory, eat more and continue losing weight as long as we're in a calorie deficit relative to how much we're eating and how much we're moving. And so there's this thing called G-flex, which is where ideally we want to increase our activity and our exercise through walking or running or working out and things like that so that we can afford to eat more and still be in a calorie deficit. And it allows us to feel more comfortable in a calorie deficit than it would if we were not moving and we were having to just reduce our food intake. But what I think people get into is and this is the mistake that I used to make, is they'll just start exercising like crazy. They'll start doing, walking 15, 20,000 steps a day, doing high intensity interval training, working out 4, 5, 6 days a week, not paying close enough attention to their food intake. And then they're doing all this work and they're still not losing weight because they're not dialing in their food intake enough, and they're literally just consuming too many calories even for all this work that they're doing. And now they're frustrated, just like I was, because they're doing all this work and they're still not losing weight. So you really have to learn to prioritize food first, because it's so easy. One donut is like 300 calories. One piece of pizza is 300 to 400 calories. It's so easy to eat a large amount of calories in 30 seconds, but to burn 300 to 400 calories walking or running would take like 45 minutes to an hour. So we really have to learn to prioritize eating right first, and then pairing that with a sustainable amount of daily activity, 8,000 steps a day, 30 to 45 minute strength training workouts a week. And if we do that right, we're putting the right focus on our food first, and then pairing that with the right amount of sustainable activity and working out, then that's the sweet spot. We don't feel like we're having to kill ourselves in the gym or on the treadmill or doing cardio to get it. And we're also not sabotaging ourselves because we're maybe doing a little bit better with our food, but we're not doing good enough. Which brings me to the next one, which is relying only on calorie reduction. So we don't want to only rely on dialing in our food and forget to go out there and to get active by walking and hitting a daily step goal, by doing at least 3 workouts a week, 30 to 45 minutes of strength training. If we don't hit that step goal and we don't do strength training and we only target by reducing our calories, really 2 or 3 bad things that happen here. Number one, we have to eat way less to be able to get ourselves into a calorie deficit because we're just not moving. And that's not good, right? That means we are going to feel hungry. We are not going to feel satisfied. We're going to potentially not be able to get enough protein in. We're going to not be getting enough nutrients in general because we're not moving. And in order to get ourselves into a calorie deficit, we do have to practically starve ourselves to get into a calorie deficit because we're just not moving at all. Number one, we want to be hitting that 8,000 to 10,000 steps a day goal. We want to be doing that strength training because that does give us a little bit more margin, like I said, to eat more and still be in a calorie deficit, which makes losing weight be way more comfortable and way more sustainable. There's so much that can go wrong, and that I have experienced myself going wrong by not pairing properly the right amount of daily activity and strength training with the right amount of food. We don't want to do that, right? We want to pair these things together, prioritize food first, pair it with sustainable daily activity and strength training, and that is the Goldilocks zone for where we want to get great weight loss results in a way that doesn't suck. Number 7 is being inconsistent. This one is a really hard pill to swallow because there's a really big difference between putting in an effort and doing what's required to get the results. One of the things I actually see all the time, I have people come to me and they interview for our weight loss program and they'll say, well, I eat pretty good. And I always have to push back and say, look, I'm so glad that you're paying attention to the food you're eating and you're making improvements and you're eating pretty good. But unfortunately, eating pretty good is not enough to get the results that you want. Because when it comes to weight loss, it's all about being in a calorie deficit. And unless you are being consistent with the food that you're eating the right amount of calories every day, and consistent with your daily activity and your workouts, it's gonna be impossible to know if you're in a calorie deficit. If your food is all over the place, right? You hit the calorie goal one day, the next day you go way over, right? The next day you hit it, the next 3 days you're over. Same thing with your activity levels. If you hit the step goal today, but then tomorrow is a lazy day, and then the next 2 days you hit the step goal, and then the next day after that is a lazy day. Your activity levels are all over the place, your intake is all over the place, and you have no idea if you're in a calorie deficit. That's the way I used to operate when I was trying to lose weight, and that's no wonder I was frustrated. So here's what I have found, again, over years of coaching people, 80% consistency will, generally speaking, for most people, get great results. So what does that mean? It means we don't have to be perfect. 80% of the days, you should be hitting your step goal, hydrating properly, eating the right amount of calories, getting enough protein in, getting good sleep. 80% of the time, if we're hitting these things across the board 80% of the time, then for the average person, you're going to be able to lose weight without having to be perfect at 90 or 100%. So 80% is the goal that we give all of our clients in our program. And like I said, we have a 90% success rate with the last last 30 clients who went through our program. So that works pretty well. 80% is good. Again, don't worry about being perfect, shoot for 80%, but focus on being consistent, because there's nothing more frustrating than feeling like you're putting in effort and not seeing the results. And it's just because you're just 5 or 10% off from being able to see the results that you actually want to see. Number 8 is just not tracking your weight consistently. Now, I used to be all over the map when it came to when I would weigh. I went through seasons where I would weigh every day, and then I went through seasons where I would weigh like once a week or once every couple of weeks. And what I have found over the years is, generally speaking, that it's best to weigh yourself every day and to take an average of your weekly weight to make decisions off of, and to learn how to not be reactive to the scale, whether it's moving in the way you want it to or not. In the past, if I hit like what we call a false plateau on the scale, meaning I was doing everything right and my scale hadn't moved for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, God forbid 5 days, then I used to get into this mental funk, and I would ultimately kind of sabotage. I'd say, well, screw it. I'm doing all this stuff. I'm walking, I'm working out, I'm trying to do the right thing with my food. My scale hasn't gone down. Screw it. I'm just going to go through the drive-thru. I'm going to cheat on my diet, whatever it was. And then same thing, I would sometimes see the scale go down 2 or 3 pounds, and I'd be like, woohoo, that's great. And then I would do what? I would justify going out and eating a cheat meal or something like that. I had to learn to get into the right mindset when it came to my relationship with the scale. And what that looks like for me and for a lot of my clients is that we weigh every day, but we don't react to or make any decisions based on today's weight or even 3 or 4 or 5 days. We want to look at our average weight week to week. Ideally, we want to be seeing our average weight going down a little bit week over week, 1 pound a week, 2 pounds a week, somewhere in there. But outside of that, if we don't see our average weight go down this week, well, there's a lot of things that go into fluctuation on the scale. In fact, I did a video about it. I'll put a card up here. You can go watch this video on really deep diving into all of the things that cause scale fluctuations and how you can go for 2, maybe even 3 weeks without seeing a drop on the scale because of all of those fluctuations, even when you're doing everything right and even when it's working. So we don't want to be short-term reactive to the scale when it's not going down. We also don't want to be short-term reactive rewarding ourselves with cheat meals and things like that when the scale does go down. We want to focus on doing the habits, eating the right amount every day, making sure that the food we're eating has protein, has fiber, is properly portioned and tastes great, walking the steps, doing the workouts, hydrating. We want to focus on the lifestyle itself. We want to track the data daily so we have that consistent data to use in the long term, but we want to divorce ourselves from the day-to-day, even week-to-week weight, and really think in terms of 3 weeks of data. So the saying within our program is 3 weeks before we freak. And that's because we know that the human body can retain water for 2, maybe even 3 weeks based on hormonal fluctuations in a calorie deficit. So we don't want to make any decisions based on reducing someone's food intake or increasing someone's food intake or increasing or decreasing activity levels based on even 2 weeks of data. We wait until we see 3 weeks of data where the average weight is not going down on the scale for 3 weeks before we make any changes. Because 99% of the time, if we wait 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to see a massive drop on the scale and we didn't have to change anything. But we have to track that weight consistently every day in order to have that data, and we don't want to be reactive to it in the short term. Number 9 is drinking alcohol. And I go through cycles. I've talked about this vocally on my channel at different times, my relationship with alcohol. I have kind of an on again, off again relationship with alcohol. I enjoy drinking alcohol, but I take breaks from it pretty frequently. Right now I'm kind of on a break from alcohol, just very, very sparsely drinking. But drinking alcohol does make it a lot more difficult for a lot of people when it comes to consistent weight loss. And it does that because, number 1, it impacts our inhibitions and our decision-making faculties. So most people, including myself, when I drink, I am just way more prone to overeating. I'm prone to saying screw it and eating things that I probably are not going to lead me to accomplishing my goals in the moment. And then also, alcohol is high calorie. Alcohol is 7 calories per gram, and that adds up very, very quickly. So it's high calorie, and it impacts our decision-making faculties, making us more prone to eat more food and more calories in general. So when I am trying to lean out, when I am trying to lose weight, get ready for the beach, whatever, I do, generally speaking, stop drinking alcohol for that season, just so that I can get there faster and with less frustration. And then usually when I'm in a maintenance season where I'm not trying to lose or gain weight, I will resume drinking alcohol in respectable, responsible volumes. Then I'll be fine. But I do find it very difficult for myself, and a lot of our clients find it difficult to balance losing weight and drinking alcohol at the same time. Some people do it, and we have clients that do it, but I would say it's probably 10% of people who do that successfully. Probably 80 to 90% of people who need to really greatly reduce or take a break from alcohol while they are losing weight. Number 10 is getting distracted by all of the guru nonsense that is out there. And there's just so much of this that it's overwhelming. I can't even address or even begin to address all of the garbage that is out there on the internet. And it's all relative too. Someone else probably watched this video and say that what I'm saying here is garbage. You know, fine, whatever. There is so much out there, and it's so distracting to people from what really matters. You could get on YouTube or Facebook and just get lost in marketing, people saying that fasting is the way, but then other people say, no, fasting isn't the way. And then someone's saying, well, you should be a vegan. No, you should eat carnivore. No, you should eat keto. And you should take this supplement, and you should biohack, and you should do this, and you should do that. And you should not eat after 6 p.m. or maybe it's 4 p.m. or like what? There's just so much. Frankly, it's just extremely overwhelming to people. I've just found that so much of that stuff does not matter. All that matters truly for fat loss is that you get yourself into a consistent calorie deficit. Ideally, you want to be walking your 8,000 steps a day, doing strength training so you're not losing muscle mass, hydrating. The basics are what gets the results. It honestly does not matter whether you stop eating at 6 p.m. or you eat your last snack literally in bed and then roll over and turn off the light and go to sleep. If your total calorie intake for the day was what it needed to be and your activity levels were hit for the day, you hit your calorie deficit. Good job. Doesn't matter how many meals or snacks you ate that day, if you ate it all in one sitting or if you spread it out throughout the day. Doesn't matter if you did intermittent fasting or didn't do intermittent fasting. Literally, none of that matters. I have clients in our program who eat 3 meals and 2 snacks spread all throughout the day. They start eating at 5 a.m. when they first wake up, and they don't finish until 6 p.m. and then they don't eat in the evening time and they go to bed. I have clients who literally fast all day and eat all of their calories in a 4-hour window. I have people like me where I don't eat in the morning, but I do typically eat lunch, then a snack, then dinner, then a snack, and I literally have my snack in bed at like 9:30 at night before I roll over and go to bed. I have clients who span the entire spectrum and they all lose weight in the exact same way, and the end result is the exact same. And so I'm here to just release you from the overwhelm and release you from just getting distracted by all this crap. All that matters, you don't need a supplement, you don't need a fancy workout. Great example, okay, Lori is one of our clients who lost like over 150 pounds in 12 months. I'll throw her before and afters up here on the screen. You would look at this and you would think, okay, Lori probably followed the perfect workout plan to accomplish this result. No, Lori did one full body workout using only gym machines, no dumbbells, no bands, no kettlebells, nothing fancy at all. She just came into my gym and just used the seated machines only and did a full body workout, one workout done 3 days a week, the same workout, 3 days a week for 12 months straight. And that got these results that you see on the screen. She didn't need some super fancy workout. So don't get distracted by all that nonsense. Just focus on the basics. Are you eating the right amount, getting enough protein and enjoying your food? Are you walking and hitting a step goal every day? And are you strength training? Honestly, that's all that matters. Number 11, obsessing over eating clean. Now, I have made a few videos about this on my channel. I think the last video that I made actually specifically talked about my views when it comes to healthier processed foods that are coming out now. If you missed that, I recommend going back and watching that. And if you pay attention to my channel, I'm a huge believer in using some of the healthier versions of processed foods that are coming out now to make the weight loss journey a lot more sustainable and a lot more enjoyable and a lot more convenient, pairing it with whole foods and other things like that in order to strike a balance that allows us to get results in a really sustainable way. But one thing that I used to fall into the trap of was really obsessing over eating clean. And that happened for a couple of reasons. When I first got into the industry, it was during a time when eating whole foods only was kind of like the shtick. Everybody was pushing eating nothing but whole foods. And then I got into functional medicine health coaching, and I went through and got my functional medicine health coaching certification. And in the functional medicine space, they're all about eating whole foods. They're all about eliminating avoiding processed foods and ultra processed foods and eliminating all food dyes and artificial sweeteners and all that stuff. So I've lived at both ends of the spectrum. I have lived at the end of the spectrum where my diet was horrible, like the worst version of the standard American diet, eating nothing but junk food and fast food. And then I've lived at the extreme opposite end of that spectrum where I ate nothing but whole foods and I cut out all processed foods. I cut out all food dyes. I cut out everything, and it was bland and boring, but effective. I've been at both ends of the spectrum. What I have found is that at that extreme end of the spectrum, where I had eliminated everything and was eating nothing but whole foods, I did feel amazing, but I found it very difficult for me to sustain that. It takes a lot more time to buy nothing but whole foods and to prep and to eat that. It is way more inflexible in less compatible doing normal life in the way that we do in this culture. And I found it really difficult and I found it hard to sustain. It wasn't sustainable for me to live that way. And so I backed off of that a little bit. And if this is the health spectrum, which is where this end is the worst end of the standard American diet, which is all fast food and junk, and this end is like ultra clean, I live about right here, almost at the end, which is this is where I can drink Diet Pop. I can have a Diet Pepsi and it's not gonna kill me. I can have some of these healthier versions of processed foods. And if I live right like 90% with those, then I'm able to have more convenience, more enjoyment, more variety in my food, and my lifestyle becomes much more sustainable. And it allows me to do life in a normal way without having to feel like I'm white knuckling, staying on track all the time. That's my advice. Is I had to kind of stop obsessing over eating clean. I had to loosen the reins just a little bit. And what I have found is that I am just as healthy and I feel just as amazing as when I was 100% whole foods. Number 12 is saying, I know what to do, I just need to make myself do it. I used to do this back when I was eating nothing but whole foods, back when I was exercising, trying to over-exercise or out-exercise a bad diet, back when I didn't know what made this lifestyle sustainable in the first place. I would just say, okay, gosh, I know what I need to do. I just need to eat this food. I just need to do these workouts. I just need to blah, 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 blah. I wasn't paying attention to what actually made the lifestyle sustainable. Meaning, did I actually like the healthy food that I was eating? Did I have some convenient options that made it doable during busy seasons? Did I have enough variety in my day-to-day eating? There were all these things that I was completely ignoring. And I was just like, okay, I just got to do it. I just got to make myself do it. And I had this discipline-only approach, which is where I think a lot of people fall into that trap. And the problem with that is you just feel like you're just white knuckling it, and you'll start and then you'll stop, and then you'll start and then you'll stop. And I did it. I would start, stop, start, stop, start. I was yo-yo dieting. I would like lose a few pounds, gain it back. Eventually I had to stop and I had to say, okay, maybe I don't know what to do. There's a difference between knowing what to do to get yourself into a calorie deficit, lose a few pounds, and knowing how to do that in a way that is sustainable, enjoyable, convenient, flexible with daily, life in the real world, flexible with a social life. And so I had to understand that, yeah, I knew a way to get into a calorie deficit, but it wasn't a way to do it sustainably. By admitting that I didn't know what to do, that allowed me to open myself up to learning about sustainability and to learning and building a truly sustainable lifestyle that ultimately did get me the results that I wanted in a sustainable way. And ultimately all that learning became the foundations of our program, Healthy and Whole, as well. But I couldn't get there if I just kept walking around saying, I know what to do. I just need to make myself do it. I had to kind of let go of my ego a little bit and say, you know what? I don't know what to do. Because if I knew what to do, I wouldn't be having this problem still. So I had to check the ego so that I could learn what I needed to learn and move forward. Number 13 is learning how to properly maintain. There were a bunch of times where I would lose some weight and then I would gain it back. Sometimes I would lose the weight and gain it back very quickly, like it was during the holiday season. Sometimes I would lose the weight and I would just very slowly gain it back. And then over a course of a few months or maybe a year, I would be back where I started. And that was really, really frustrating. What I learned in the long run is that I didn't know how to properly maintain weight. I think part of that was two things. Number one is I would get to my weight loss goal, but I wouldn't have a goal after I got to my weight loss goal. I would just okay, I made it. And then I was just like living in this kind of like weird, undefined space of not knowing how much I could indulge, how much I should not indulge, or how to actually balance that to stay at the weight that I wanted to be. And so I would slowly gain the weight or quickly gain the weight back. And so over time, I learned that it's actually better to define a maintenance range where you're going to live within a range of say anywhere from 5 to 10 pounds, and you're going to move up in that range And then when you get to the top of that range, you're going to say, nope, I've indulged enough and now I need to move down in that range. So it's basically, I had to learn that you're never just maintaining weight. You're kind of gaining weight or losing weight. And by having a maintenance range, you're basically just saying, okay, I'm gonna gain weight and lose weight over and over again just to stay in this range, but that becomes the goal. I had to learn that, and now we teach that to our clients in our course in Healthy and Whole, but it was super important because it puts structure around what it actually looks like to live in maintenance. And once I figured that out and I learned how to live within that structure, and I could learn how much I could indulge and how much I needed to scale back when I needed to, then I was able to maintain perfectly. And that's how, especially when you look at our clients, we have a 90% success rate because we're actually teaching people how to properly maintain. But if you don't learn that, then ultimately you're going to, whether it's very quickly in the course of a month or over the longer period of time, like a year, you're going to gain that weight back, and you don't want to do that. Number 14 was not learning how to navigate eating out or vacations or holidays and all that stuff while losing weight. Now, it's one thing to say, okay, I'm just gonna buckle down and do all the right things to get to my goal maintenance weight, and then I'm gonna figure out how to eat out in restaurants, or I'm gonna figure out how to integrate cheat meals or how to go on vacation. And you can do that. We have clients that do that, but it's better to learn how to go on vacation while losing weight. It's better to learn how to navigate the holiday season while still on average losing weight. It's better to learn how to go out and to eat in restaurants and how to order in a restaurant when it's not a cheat meal while you're losing weight. Because if you can do all of these things that we do as a part of normal human life, being social, going out to eat, going on vacation, doing all of these things, and you can still lose weight while doing those things, well, think about how much more confident that makes you when you actually get to your goal maintenance range. And this is another reason why I believe truly that we have a 90% success rate with our clients in Healthy and Whole, is because we're teaching people and coaching people through all of these things while they're in a weight loss season. We're not waiting until they get all the way, most of our clients, to maintenance to be able to teach them this. Most of our clients, probably 80% of our clients, learn and practice eating out. They learn and practice having cheat meals and getting back on track. They learn and practice going on vacations and taking a whole week off from their diet and then coming back and seeing where they land and then getting back on track. And because they're able to do that and lose weight through that process, then when they get to their maintenance range, they're like, oh my gosh, Matt, I feel so confident that I can keep this weight off because I've already experienced all these different environments. I've already experienced all of these different circumstances and scenarios, and I know exactly how to navigate them. And now I am confident, truly confident, that I can actually live life and enjoy myself and keep this weight off. Number 15 is trying to be accepted while also trying to be different. Now, I fell into this back when I was trying to lose weight a few times, when I would be trying to lose weight and trying to reach my goal, but I would have a social group of friends or coworkers who wanted to go out and they wanted to drink, or they wanted to, eat junk food all the time and stuff like that. And so I found myself sort of stuck in this tug of war mentally, emotionally between, well, I want to hit my goals, but I also want to do what everybody else is doing. What I found is I would go out to eat with people and everybody else would be eating the chips and the queso and getting drinks and doing all that stuff. And in my mind, I would say, oh man, I really, if I do this, I'm going to sabotage my progress and it's going to slow me down a week or two from hitting my next weight loss goal. But then on the other flip side of the coin, I'm like, but I want to enjoy this with these people and I want to be accepted by them and I want them to like me and I want them to feel like I'm participating. What I realized is that a lot of this noise in my head was just noise. And that at the end of the day, my friends, my family, my coworkers, 99% of them didn't care. They did not care if I ate the chips and queso with them, if I had a drink with them. If they truly cared about me, they just wanted me to be happy. What I found is if I was to go out to eat or to go on vacation or do whatever with these people, and I was to just eat what I needed to do and do what I needed to do to get the results, they 99% of the time wouldn't say anything. But if they did, they might just ask a question. And I just said, oh yeah, I'm trying to lose a few pounds, whatever, I'm good, right? And they'd be like, yeah, totally good. That was 99% of people. Now there is that 1% of people who are jerks and they're probably gonna say something, but you just kind of have to learn to just let that go. You have to learn that that's a them problem, not a you problem. A great example of this is when I was working in the corporate world, a lot of the guys that I was working with were overweight. A lot of them were bigger than me. And so there was this thing where some of them would start to make comments about how I was getting too small. And this is during my weight loss phase. And so what I found is for about 6 to 7 months, I allowed myself to be plateaued where I wasn't happy with my body yet. I wasn't happy with the leanness and how I looked, but I kind of refused to allow myself, I sabotaged my progress because I was afraid that if I just continued to lose weight to get down to where I really wanted to be and where I truly felt happy about my body, that these guys would, feel a certain way about me and blah, 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 blah. And I eventually just learned to let that go because what I realized is that 99% of these guys didn't care. And the 1%, like the one guy or two at my organization who did care and were going to say something, they were jerks and I didn't care what they thought. So I finally let go of that and I allowed myself to just focus on me and to do what I needed to do to get the results. And I got all the way down to the body composition that I loved. And I've been living there for years now because I finally let go of trying to be accepted and embraced being different in the way that I wanted to be different. And the way I want to be different is I want to be healthy, I want to be lean, I want to be strong, I want to be functional, I want to be energetic, and I want to do all of the things that allow me to be those things and not be worried about what other people think to get there. Because the thing is, in the United States, close to 80% of United States adults are overweight or obese or morbidly obese. And about half of the United States adult population has prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. So I don't want to be normal. I want to be different and I want you to be different and I want us to be different together. So we got to let go of that attachment to being accepted because most people are unhealthy. And instead, I want to be the person who's different and who can lead the way for everybody else, if that makes sense. Number 16 is chasing perfection and constantly starting over tomorrow or starting over on Monday. This one, I think, really kind of almost falls in alignment with what we talked about earlier, where you don't have to be perfect. 80% execution can get you great results. But the mindset that I think I want to highlight here is that if you at 10 a.m. or noon or 2 p.m. make a mistake, right? You make a decision that wasn't the best. We're human. It happens, whatever. In the past, when I wasn't being successful, when I would make a mistake, the whole rest of the day would be a free-for-all. Or sometimes the whole rest of the week would be a free-for-all. And I literally would just waste an entire week of binging before I would get back on track. And this was a vicious cycle that I would just do over and over and over again. And I really had to condition myself to say, okay, you know what? If my plans changed, all of a sudden I got asked out to lunch or I decided to indulge or something like that at noon, that's okay. I still have the whole rest of the day to finish strong. I still have the whole rest of the day to be creative about, okay, so what? I had a bigger lunch than I planned. Maybe I'll have a lighter dinner. Maybe I'll go out and walk an extra 30 minutes this evening to burn a few extra calories. I had to learn that a mistake didn't mean I had to throw out the whole day or the whole week or the whole month. I had to learn how to say, okay, I can adapt. I can still finish the day strong and I can still finish the week strong and I can still finish the month strong. Why am I gonna dig myself into an even deeper hole today or this week than I had to just because I made one mistake when I can get right back on track and I can actually finish the week way ahead? And then lastly, number 17 is focusing too much on the end goal. I think everybody has to have a goal. You should have a long-term goal that is very compelling to you. You should know roughly where you want to be, what weight you want to be, what you want your body to look like, what you want to feel like. All of that is super important because it can be really motivating, but it can also be overwhelming if you have 50 pounds or 100 pounds or 150 pounds to lose to be only thinking about that long-term goal. It can feel like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get there. That is so much ground to cover. How am I ever going to be there? Especially if you've tried and failed many times in the past. So I used to struggle with this, and what I had to really learn, I wanted to have a long-term goal, but then I wanted to break that long-term goal into a lot of shorter goals. I like to have short-term goals of anywhere from 5 to 15 pounds at a time that I'm focused on. And then beyond that, I'm just focusing on winning the day. I'm focusing on winning the day that I'm living right now. In the running community, they say, run the mile you're in. If you're running a marathon, don't be thinking about mile 24 or mile 25, run the mile you're in. And same thing, today, focus on today. What are you going to eat today? When are you going to do your steps? Where are you going to work out? When are you going to get your workout in? Are you hydrating? Just focus on today. And if you win the day every day consistently, those days will add up and the results in the longer term will take care of themselves. But projecting out and thinking about the far off future that is not relevant to you and doesn't have any bearing on your decision making today only introduces worry and doubt, makes you start to get overwhelmed by the whole process. And just like me, I had to learn, okay, yeah, I see the mountaintop in the distance that I'm going toward. I know where I want to go. Today, I'm focused on today. I'm going to win today. I'm going to eat the food I need to eat. I'm going to hit my step goal. I'm going to do a workout if today's a workout today. And that's it. And if you do that consistently, just like me, you'll get where you want to be. And as long as you're learning along the way, you will learn, you will grow, and you will build something sustainable along the way. And the rest will take care of itself. So if this has been helpful, like, subscribe. And if you want another video kind of like this one, I recommend watching this video right here. 7 rules that I live by to stay lean pretty much year round. I think you'll like that one as well. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.